I'm here with Einar of Wardruna to talk about the upcoming new record, Birna, out January 24th on Sony Music. Always a pleasure to see you, always a pleasure to talk to you about the music, and even a bigger pleasure to listen to a new record.
Well, the honor is mine and pleasure is mine. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about this record, and let me start off by asking you this. Uh, Before we even talk about the album, after six records now, has Wardruna lived up to the vision that you had for the band when the project started?
Uh, Absolutely. Um, yeah, and of course that's an ongoing process, I would say. And yeah, ongoing process and ongoing journey. Um, and of course, it's become what I envisioned musically, conceptually. Uh, uh, but also more, so much more than I could ever imagine. Both like what it has become, um, sort of for everyone who follows it, but also for um, personally. Yeah, so absolutely, and then some.
When it's time for you to sit down and start thinking about a new record, does every album have the same origin story, or does every record allow you to, not only discover something new within yourself, but also discover a new way of creating the art form that you do?
Yes, to both. It is, of course. I don't think I could ever like just make the same record two times, or like it's like I said, it's a journey. Different things that move me now, that moved me like 5 years ago or 25 years ago when I started this. So of course, the outcome will reflect that. For me, it has to come from somewhere that is real. That's the dominant factor. So even though the creative concept is the same as it was 25 years ago. A lot of the instruments are the same, but of course, I am not the same. My skills are not the same. My experience is, um, yeah, everything you do here in life, or both as a musician and as a human, as an artist, that's reflected in the outcome. So of course, there is. Um, a lot of similarities in the methods and sort of the concept, the soundscape, but every time feels like truly like starting all over again. It's like I forgot how it was done every time I start on something. Clean slates in a way.
When I was listening to this record, the first thing there's two elements about this album that spoke to me immediately as I went through the record. One was that the album, perhaps more than any other record that you've released before, had a very diverse fingerprint as far as each song was concerned. I felt like they were all really well connected in the context of the album, but each one of them had its own set of uniquenesses that really set them apart from the overall collective. And then, having said that, the whole album has this very shaman-like experience, really connected to earth, nature, and it comes across almost like a almost like if Earth had a voice and we could hear the voice of Earth, that voice was represented in the overall album, not just in the vocal performance, but in the way the sound represented the record as well. So it's two things that seem completely separated from one another, but somehow you found a way of connecting them both and allowing the record to have cohesiveness. Do you see the
Mm.
album from that same angle, from that same perspective?
Um, yeah, I clearly understand what you mean. Each part has a very unique signature, unique function. At the same time, I would say it's the album I've created that it makes most sense of them all to listen to as a whole, because it is very much a story. And just like one does in a symphony, I sort of borrow from many of the different pieces of the story, they lean on each other. They borrow from each other, both when it comes to poetry, certain tonalities, and at the same time, yeah, they sort of depend on each other. When you listen to them in the context, they make more sense. That's how I personally feel it. But of course, they stand alone. But they all have a very different function in this storyline. So of course, it's good that you feel it's not just one bowl of porridge
Definitely
with the
not.
same flavor, with the same flavor, every bite with the same flavor. It's supposed to feel like a journey through different phases uh, of of um, of the earth, basically, of the world, the universe, and even though the focus, sort of the lens of the story is and perspective is very much taking the bear perspective. The bear is a very cyclic being. It At the same time, it really mirrors Mother Earth's cyclic nature, as well as other movements we see in nature. So it's sort of describing nature, but through the eyes of the bear. But it could be both, and it could be just one of them, and so it's all very open ended in that sense. Um, whether you take the story as a very physical thing with just explaining the cycle of a year, that works, but you can draw it out in a more cosmic sense. But also, yeah, there are many perspectives you can view it from, and that's the purpose as well. It is, yeah.
You mentioned the character of the bear and how connected it is to nature. Humans at one point were super connected to nature, and we looked up to nature as a god almost that gave us life and would give us different cycles throughout the years and allowed us to do what we did and survive as a race and as a culture. Do you feel the more you create this kind of music, the more you realize that there is a sense of complete disconnect from where we currently sit as human beings on this planet and the planet that has given us life and allow us to be where we are?
um, of course I see those things, but but that's totally separate to my music, or the things I realized throughout this. Of course, it it perhaps amplifies it, but I guess what I'm trying to do and why I think our music is speaking to so many people is because I think our music can function almost like a bridge between between the void, us, the void, and our surroundings, nature. Because, as you say, we are, as a species, we are or a lot of us are very much disconnected from it, and get all sorts of problems as a result of that. Our way of living doesn't, we don't follow the cycles anymore, and of course that's also the lesson, one of the lessons to be learned from the bear, to to follow the rhythm of Mother Earth, the way we also used to do it more when we were living closer to nature. You eat locally, you eat seasonally, you have a different behavior during wintertime than you do during summertime. But now we're supposed to have the same tempo, everything at all the time, at any time. Yeah, sort of like a machine, separate from all the other movements that are happening in the world around us, that we are a part of, whether or not we want it or not. We are affected by it. So of course, when you give voice to the wild, like we are trying to do, those are the things we are voicing, and perhaps more clearly than ever on this album. I know a lot of people think our music is about Vikings and stuff like that because our music was in various TV productions and things connected to the Viking Age specifically, but that's not really what our music is about. It is very much about, the core of it has always been about nature, and our relation to it, and of course our relation to each other in a sense.
I think you're able to break a little bit of that cycle a little bit more with this record. I don't know if you agree with that, but I feel like this album has a little bit more of a distinct fingerprint on what you're trying to say, that it is not just about Viking culture. This is a lot deeper than that. And I feel like this album really sets itself apart in the way that it was created.
Yeah, it's yeah, for me, you know um, I guess on the last two records, uh, I, we speak more clearly and less esoteric about these things. It's more direct. So I definitely, yeah, I would say the two last albums, and in this one in particular, even more so, speaks very directly about what it is about. Um, yeah, and as you say, yeah, this goes very far about uh, above and beyond uh, a tiny piece of history, which the Viking period is. It's just a tiny piece of the puzzle, and in my personal opinion, not the most interesting one either. And so yeah, that's definitely not what our music is about. Um,
When you go through the process of creating this record, is there a piece of the puzzle of making the album that, in your opinion, is perhaps more critical than any other in order for the end result to be exactly what your vision is?
um, yeah, with Wardruna, the way I create, it demands patience and it demands time. I like to, I don't work like a lot of people. They either have like a very intensive period where they basically write the album while they record it in a short time period, or they have already pre-written it, go into studio and record it. For me, it's a more I like to spend a lot of time thinking about things, um, having like knowing how to say what I want to say. Um, so I have a specific thing I'm hunting. The problem has a shape in a way. Um, then then I like to have many of these intensive periods, and then I can step back and yeah, look, um, observe it from a distance again, and then go into that process. So moving in and out of that creative process, that's important for me in how I work with Wardruna. Also because um, several of the, like Lindy, we live in different parts of the country as well, so we can that's also part of it, having time to uh, yeah yeah, it's more practical in that sense, and I don't like to rush it, but then again sometimes uh, well, and then again when when we're moving closer to like to finishing it, then I perhaps spent a few months where that is the only thing I eat, sleep, dream, is the songs, the album. Um, which is also a very important part when that creation just becomes part of you, every cell. Yeah, so that's how I like, I prefer to work, and especially I find it important with these things. So yeah, time and patience and distance, having the potential of distance, that's an important ingredient.
There's a popular expression that says that a picture is worth 1,000 words. When I listened to this album, I felt like the sound was worth 1,000 pictures because it spoke to me so much just with sound. So when you're putting a record like this, that the sound kind of speaks for itself, and then it's time for you to add some vocal pieces to it. What are you trying to finish off with the vocals that the sound by itself wasn't able to do?
Well, one thing is words, which, of course, for many people who are not native Norwegian speaking, it becomes an instrument. But still, the words are there, the intention is there, the thoughts behind it, it's all there. And I believe words and their content and is really powerful and really important. Not only how they sound, but what they mean, where they come from, and how they are combined. Poetry, the power of poetry, um, and words is of course one important factor, but also the way we work, perhaps more and more, is that um, yeah, the vocals are very instrumental. So and even if you don't understand the language, you understand or you can feel the intention and the heart in it, so to speak. So it's a very important melodic tool for me. It's an instrument, and it's a way of really putting heart and spirit into a thing that I think you can do it with instruments, but I think the most powerful instrument that exists is the voice. So of course it's an important part of the puzzle, I think, and there are so many ways of using the voice as well, and using the vocals, which is a really fantastic thing with working with Lindy Faihalla as well, the female singer of Wardruna. She has such a profoundly powerful character, primal character to her voice, and she has a very unique way of unique and diverse way of expressing herself in music. So yeah, it, I feel it adds a lot.
I've seen you guys perform in Toronto, a sold out show in Toronto a couple of years back, more than a couple
Yeah.
of years back. And to see people, like you said, that don't necessarily understand or speak Norwegian to enjoy your music and to take something from it, some really deep rooted emotion out of the performance, but out of the music and out of what you're singing about. Does that always warm your heart to see that your message is not bounded by the restrictions of a language?
Yeah, it's perhaps one of the things that I'm most proud of in a way, and the fact that it gathers so many different types of people, that it speaks to so many different types of people all over the world. It's something I'm very humble about. It's very humbling to stand in that space where you are. Yeah, performance is about becoming one with your surroundings, the sound you are part of, the words you sing, and the people in front of you. It's all like one big powerful pot, so to say, and to be, yeah, to stand in that in that energy and the love we receive. It's just, yeah, I can never get used to that. It's yeah, it's something I'm very humble and grateful to be allowed to experience. truly.
The work that you've done over the years, not just in terms of the records that you've created, but the live performances and everything that goes into it. Is it still easy after all these years to be motivated to continue to create new albums, new music, new sounds?
Well, the dominating factor for me isn't if I'm motivated or not. For me, it has to come from a desire to say something. And if I don't have anything I want to say, then of course, then I think I will start doing something else, because doing some half-ass thing that doesn't really matter, or doesn't come from somewhere that is real, then that would be like shooting myself in the kneecap, and really go against what Wardruna is and has always been, something genuine, from the heart. And so I guess it comes down to that. As long as I and we have something we want to communicate, I think, yeah, we're going to continue. What I do notice is that I really have to dig deeper every time I go into this process, and of course that's also part of it. It has to speak to me. It has to move me, for it to to deserve to be sung about, or. So, and I guess, that's what comes with age and experience, and all of those things that you, yeah, the cauldron is becomes deeper and deeper. So you have to dig deeper and deeper also for things to truly speak to you.
Yeah, you mentioned the show Vikings. I got to ask you about your work on the show. Was it something that you look back with pride and joy? Did you enjoy your time there? Would you do it again if a chance came?
Yeah, I really enjoyed being part of it. I learned so much from that process, both on working with like Trevor Morris, who was the main composer, but also, of course, I did a lot of work directly with the production as well, both on the stuff that happened in front of the camera, the musical input, like the song of the two brothers, and lots of other things. And yeah, so at that point, I'd only done smaller things in terms of work for TV and film. So that was such a steep learning curve, and yeah, so I'm really happy, and proud of my contribution to the show. If I would have done it again, I would have done it again. But if I'm going to do it again, that's a different question. Because I don't know. Yeah, perhaps if the right opportunity comes along at some point, or the right project, and the timing is right, of course. For me, it's important I like to be selective in the projects I get involved in, and of course the most important thing is that if I think I can do a good job, um, and so yeah, it all depends.
I think it's safe to say we will not see you in season 4 of Norseman.
Uh, no, but I did create music for Norsemen as well. Not many people do know, but of course they use some Wardruna music. But also I created some small pieces that.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it's so it's cool to have done Vikings, but also have done music for the parody.
Yeah, yeah. That's
It's
why I had no idea that you had work on that show. It's one of my son and I, we love that show. I think we've watched that show multiple times because there's only 3 seasons. There's not much to watch.
no, no,
But
no.
I had no
It's
idea you had worked on it.
yeah, no, it's a wonderful show, and a lot of really good people are involved in it as well. So yeah, typical Norwegian dry, silly humor.
I love it. I love it. One last question for you. Do you have any plans, or is there any plans in the horizon for you to return to North America and do a similar tour that what you did? I think was before the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken,
It was actually right
or right
after the
after.
pandemic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right
so
after.
it was quite recently after like everything. It was allowed to do tours again. We did sort of a tour that we had been juggling around since way before the pandemic, of course, like many other bands. But yes, there are plans to return to North America, and yeah, I advise people to stay tuned for updates. And if you do want to, uh, yeah, if you don't want to miss um, important news from our camp, then I really encourage people to skip all the platforms where you have all this algorithm bullshit that you get lost in, and rather go to wardruna.com and sign up for our newsletter. We don't spam people with emails about everything, pushing things onto people, but we do write. Whenever there are important things such as new releases or videos or of course concert announcements. So that's the best place to follow us actually.
So what I'm going to do is in the description of the video, I'm going to put a link to the site so that people can go directly to the source, like you said, sign up for the
Yeah,
newsletter and keep themselves informed. Einar, thank you very much for your time. This is always a pleasure. Every time I sit down with you, I have such a great time talking to you about your music. Almost as great of a time as when I see you live. Almost. Live is
almost.
a much better experience.
Yeah,
Congratulations
yeah.
on the record. Comes out once again January 24th on Sony Music. Thank you. All the best.
Likewise, sir. Thank you so much for having me.